So everybody knows Clive Barker is clearly dying.
The
Dude,
AIDS, dude.
we just saw a Clive Marker movie. That's where Marker?
That's
Clive
Clive
Marker?
Barker.
He has a sponsorship deal with
Crayola?
Sharpie.
Oh.
Anyway, we just saw a Clive Barker movie. Of course, we clicked on it. You already know it's Nightbreed.
Yes.
And yeah, we saw it has an introduction with Clive Barker and Mark Miller. Not that one. And yeah, man, he looked healthy in the sense of he was, corpulent and a little vibrant.
Yeah.
Versus now where he's just a skeleton.
Yeah.
Now, granted, the Barker I'm used to is the muscular Barker.
Yeah.
Painting with a semi-shirt on. It's kind of gay. That's how I remember him the most, but whatever.
I mean, that's the best Barker.
That is the best Barker. That's why, man. See, you understand. You get it. It's not gay at all. But anyway.
It's a little gay.
Barker's so sick, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, at least he got to make this version of Nightbreed. Nightbreed is one of those movies that had a reputation. It had a cult following. Let me adjust this. It had a cult following when it came out. Well, let me correct that a little bit. It came out and flopped horribly. Nobody went to see this fucking thing. But afterwards, it gained a cult following. And everybody knew that there had been production troubles. Namely, that James G. Robinson, the producer, told Barker that he didn't get his movie. He didn't understand what the fucking deal was with the movie. Biggest reason why, the humans are the bad guys in this movie. And the monsters are the good guys. Now, we live in the age of Del Toro-isms.
Yeah.
So that's like nothing new to us. But back in the day, of course, especially in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, people didn't want good guy monsters. If they had a good guy monster, it was just because he was likable, like Freddy. We like his jokes, but he's still a bad guy.
Yeah, not a good guy.
You know what I'm saying? So that was the deal with Nightbreed and the production clashing. They were like, dude, this is not going to fly. Make something else out of it. The thing is, you can't re-edit Nightbreed into a movie that's not about that. It's impossible. There is no movie version where the monsters are the bad guys.
That's the whole point.
So the edited version we got was kind of like, a pared down pseudo-Frankensteinian version, the theatrical edition. But you know what? It garnered a following nonetheless. It is my second favorite Barker movie after Lord of Illusions, that theatrical version. However, the rumors always persisted that there was that footage out there, that somebody had the footage. It's somewhere, guys. Where is it? Nobody knows, whatever. Morgan Creek and Warner Brothers weren't really playing cooperative. But the rumors persisted, and there was enough people behind this movement to actually begin a search and start to cobble together things. Lo and behold, a cut came out of the woodworks, and they toured with it, and finally it got a release here with the Nightbreed director's cut. This is kind of like Barker's definitive statement on Nightbreed. And I say that because there's going to be a new cut with even more footage called the Cabal cut, because the source material was originally called Cabal, and he's not involved in it.
Yeah.
He said, "This is my version. That's it." And I suspect that's mostly because clearly he's sick and he's just as tired and doesn't want to do anything anymore.
Dude, when you got the AIDS, you can't just be cutting your movies again.
We might be accusing him of something he doesn't have, and that's fine. If he's got AIDS, he's got AIDS. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I mean, it is, physically speaking.
It's not a good thing.
But it's very transparent that something's wrong. So anyway, Nightbreed, the director's cut, at the moment, the definitive version of this particular movie. And I suspect it'll still be the definitive version, even if the Cabal cut comes out. Although I may be proven wrong, and if I am proven wrong, then good. That just means we got another version, because I like the theatrical version, and I really like the director's cut. So let's talk about this movie. You had seen Nightbreed before, but it's been forever, so you didn't really remember anything. What is it? This
Moonhead.
And then kind of, there's 45 minutes of new footage in this. 20 to 25 of those minutes are literally new footage. The other 20 are substitute footage for stuff that was there, so you kind of see things in a new light. So it is a kind of a different movie. Or really, it is a different movie. So it's kind of like you watched it again for the first time. What's your impression, man? What you think?
I enjoyed it. I do think that it's a little chaotic. especially towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an enjoyable film nonetheless. Filled with Danny Elfman music. That is definitely Danny Elfman music.
Yeah, Elfman was getting his elf on.
It was the most Elfmanian music I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, he was going crazy, especially with the horns.
It
Lots of flutes, maybe some piccolos.
was a little much towards the end. I was
Mhm.
like, dude, chill out with the flutes. But I like Danny Elfman, so it's not bad, right? You can't have too much Elfman.
Right.
Can you?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a bit much on the flutes.
Anyway, yeah, I do enjoy it. It's pretty fun. I don't think it's like like a 100% amazing movie,
Mhm.
but it is a really fun movie.
This is a movie that stands out in my mind quite a bit because it is a different type of a horror movie. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't even classify it as horror other than the fact that it's about monsters.
Yeah,
Clive Barker kind of became famous for several reasons. One, when he came on with Books of Blood, Stephen King was all over that boy. Not that way. And a lot of horror names were like, hey, this guy's somebody to watch. And he was one of the people that started the splatterpunk movement. But he transcended that movement by himself, immediately almost. Splatterpunks indulged in the visceral to the point of the art being kind of like, lost in the grotesqueries. Clive Barker found a way to make the grotesque beautiful. It's weird how he does that. And the hypersexual, almost entrancing and different to how we normally see sexuality. He found all these ways to make things that we normally find repulsive and or taboo interesting and fascinating. Then, after Splatterpunk, he left that behind pretty quick, and he started something of a movement, another movement of his own, called the Dark Fantastic, and that's where I would slot Nightbreed. It's a dark fantasy movie that just happens to have a lot of horror elements in it. And it's ultimately a movie that makes a statement with its storyline, that statement being one of tolerance, about how we tend to prejudge those we don't understand. That's the thematic of the movie.
it's not a very subtle point.
No, it's not. In fact,
But
it's not intended to be subtle, mind
Yeah.
you. When it gets to the point, at first it is subtly put in there. The manipulations of the real bad guy is a psychologist played by David Cronenberg. Yes, that David Cronenberg. That's subtle in the sense that if you're watching this for the first time, you don't really know who that guy is until he reveals himself to be this manipulator. Though, of course, obviously he's the bad guy. I mean, come on. He's weird. But anyway, but once humanity as a whole, if you will, comes into the picture to put their 2 cents into this battle, it's not subtle in the least. Humans are almost cartoonishly evil in it. And it's pretty amusing. But anyway, if you haven't seen Nightbreed, it's the story of this guy named Aaron Boone that suffers from these nightmarish visions. Nightmarish visions that reveal to him ultimately that he is part of this monstrous breed known as, adequately enough, Nightbreed. And the Nightbreed we later find out, one of the many tribes, or the remnant of many tribes that were ushered away into virtual non-existence by humans who, again, tend to just judge everything and destroy it. So it's ultimately a commentary on us through the eyes of the monsters. Cool. That's the basic push of the movie, and it's all shown through us these lavish visuals. It's a very visual movie. I can't imagine, even if you don't like this movie, I can't imagine you not enjoying the amount of work that went into making some of these visuals come to life. It's pretty fascinating looking. Some of the creations just boggle the imagination. Again, grotesquerie goes hand in hand with the beautiful and the, kind of engagingly fascinating yet disgusting things that you see. And yeah, it's a very unique film. It's a very unique film. So let's get into the nitty gritty of it. But before we get into the spoilery details, would you recommend people watch this film or not?
Yes.
Ditto. So if you haven't seen it, go see it, then come back. If you don't give a shit about spoilers and or have seen it, here we go. Let's get to the nitty gritty here. Give me something good or bad about this flick.
I think a good and a bad is well, it's not a bad, but it's a good and slightly odd. I think David Cronenberg is not a great actor. In fact, he's kind of bad, but it kind of works for his character because he does kind of come off as a little like, you know, out of place, I guess.
Yeah.
With everything that's going on, but sometimes you're like, man, you can't really act, huh?
Yeah, and you know, some people would call it a wooden delivery, and it is partially. But at the same time, like you say, the character's a sociopath.
Yeah, so it kind of works.
He has no empathy. He doesn't care. He's detached. So in the end, his non-acting skills, and don't get me wrong, I've seen worse actors than him.
Yeah.
He actually tries, and it works because, again, that weird balance is struck where it just so happens that his character's an emotionless, manipulative sociopath. So it ends up kind of balancing out in an odd way. It's always interesting for me to see David Cronenberg. It's almost like every time I watch this movie, I forget he's in it. Even though I don't. I know he's in it, duh. But it's weird, you know? He's never done anything like this to that degree, you know, where he's so involved in the movie that as an actor. He's a fucking auteur. He's a fucking director, you know what I'm saying? But, and this is not even a movie which you would think maybe this is a Cronenbergian concept, other than the fact that his character says that everybody wears masks, and Cronenberg is always about this weird, inherent, betraying evil, usually physical, inside you. So I guess, I don't know what attracted him to this movie, really. Call that ignorance or just a lack of research, but I don't really know, other than maybe that he and Clive were friends. So maybe they bumped uglies. I don't know. The point is,
Probably.
it's a pretty interesting choice to cast a horror legend, or a legend of film in general, really. He's transcended horror, but in the titular role, I'm not the titular role, I'm sorry, in the lead role of the villain. Interesting, and a interesting choice, I should say. I gotta give special kudos again to the physical effects, the matte work, you know, all that stuff. You know, there's again a very visual movie, contributes to this extremely unique looking movie. You know, there's no monster that looks like another monster. There's a distinct look between reality, or what is supposed to be reality, and this world of Midian where the monsters dwell. And it's something that if you read Barker, you'll see him revisiting again and again. You know, in fact, I pointed out to you something that even when I watched this movie with Guardian, our former compatriot, he noticed. In his young adult book series, The Aberrat, there's a particular sequence where the main character in that goes into the world of the Aberrat, and she sees all these fascinating sights and grotesque, weird entities that populate this world. And there's a scene in here that's almost that sequence. It's like he cribbed himself again when he did the Aberrat. But there's a lot of signature Barker things here on the visual spectrum that, as a reader, fascinate me. So, I just got to give special kudos because this is some fantastic makeup work, some fantastic effects work in general, just the sets, etc. All gave it a very unique feel. And I'm not even saying that the sets are particularly realistic. It's almost like something between a movie and a play. It has a very strange and unique aesthetic. But I love that. That's one of the things that I think a lot of people can't ignore about the movie. Give me something, man.
I think, what's his name?
I don't know. You tell me.
I lost it, dude. He just passed me by.
All right. Well, this movie is populated by several names aside from David Cronenberg. We have, Pinhead himself, Doug Bradley, in the role of kind of like the leader of this Nightbreed tribe. And, I'll be honest with you. The first time I saw this movie, I didn't even know it was him, and that voice isn't there. He makes a completely different. He takes on a completely different affectation to his voice.
Yeah.
There's a presence to the character, of course, but it's kind of fascinating to see someone so lost in the makeup that you don't even recognize someone that you should recognize. It's pretty weird, in a good way, mind you. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. Also, got to point out that the lead female actress in this is distractingly similar to Maya Rudolph.
Yeah.
Especially there's this one sequence in the director's cut that I feel should not have been left in there.
That's a con.
That's, I guess, mini con, or mini con.
Big con.
No, it's not a big con because it's
Huge
a brief
con.
scene, but holy shit, what the fuck? Basically, the lead female character works at a cabaret as a singer, and there's a part where they just decide to kind of show most of the song that she's singing, and you're like, why is this happening? Why are we seeing this song? I can't think of any reason they would have left in that in there, other than maybe Clive Barker felt that he owed that person that favor to show their music talents. I don't know. Whatever, fuck, those talents sucked. And it's not even that the lead actress is bad. I'm not saying that. It's just that she sucks as a singer. If that was even her, I'm gonna assume it was her, because why else would you leave that in there?
Yeah.
I can only imagine Clive going, oh man, I had to cut you out in that other cut. I'm gonna put you back in. You know, and I say I gotta assume it's her because they dubbed the song over.
Yeah.
You know, she's lip syncing, but all her movements, mannerism, and facial expressions while she's singing is straight out of an SNL Maya Rudolph, singing short, like distractingly so.
Yes.
And then from that point forward, I just kept on looking for those facial mannerisms.
Happened several times. I was like, man, Rudolph.
It's pretty weird, but she is good. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that. It's one of those things that once you notice, you're like, oh, damn it, I can't unsee that. So yeah, that's a thing you gotta, I guess, contend with if you're us.
Dude, it was so long.
Give me something.
I think, like I kind of mentioned already a little,
Mm-hmm.
the Danny Elfman score is good. I'll say that it is good. But I think towards the end it was a little much for me. Because it is very chaotic. Mind you, that entire scene at the end is chaotic and it's meant to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I was like, damn, Danny, chill out. Chill out with them freaking horns.
The score is, I'm not going to say overwhelming. If I would say overwhelming, it's only because it's very upfront. You know?
Yeah.
It's not lingering in the background or accompanying things. It's like in your fucking face, blasting trumpets into your damned face, Danny Elfman style. And you're like, dude.
And I think, for the most part, it works. But I do think at times the imagery and the music kind of don't fit together too well. For the most part, it does. But like sometimes you're just like, that's Danny Elfman. And I'm watching all these like Clive Barkerian imagery.
I think maybe that's just a symptom of the fact that we're associate Danny Elfman with Tim Burton mostly, and those things that we know him most for. You know, it's kind of like a default reaction to his type of music, and since we do associate it to something specific most of the time, it seems contradictory at times. I say that because I've seen his work in other movies where it becomes so Elfman-esque that no matter how good it might or might not complement that scene, that's the exact same reaction I get. Like, this shouldn't be in this movie. And, again, like Danny Elfman, it's just weird to see his scores outside of certain things. That being said, there's moments where it does complement, I think you'll agree with me, the imagery incredibly well. And, I choose to focus on that. And there's other moments where you're like, dude, turn them horns down.
Yeah, them horns were a little much.
I don't appreciate the... As it's supposed to be on the nose, mind you, when the humans come in with their guns and their overzealous urge to kill. He goes for that old standard of ancient Hollywood movies where they just play that military drum. Dude, come on, no, don't do that. But the scene was on the nose, and it was intended to be. So I guess I'll forgive you, Danny, you ass. I'm just assuming he's an ass.
That's soon. Yeah, he is. Hashtag fact. That scene was very unsubtle, but it was pretty funny, and it was a fun like finale, even though it is kind of like, I don't want to say heavy themes, but somewhat heavier themes,
Mm-hmm.
But it was weirdly amusing, that final scene.
Yeah, if you don't know how this movie ends, and again, why didn't you watch this first? What the hell are you doing? Just watching two fat guys talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this ends in basically a massive battle between humans and monsters, which is pretty fucking cool, I gotta say. I really like this battle, and I like both versions of it, the theatrical and this version. There are differences, and yeah, not subtle in what it's saying. And there's this character that leads the police.
Yeah, dude.
He's fucking outrageously over the top funny.
Yes.
Like, any more, had they pushed him any more, and it would have probably been a comedy at that point.
It's weird because, like, the villain is David Cronenberg basically throughout the whole movie. But, like, at I don't know, like, towards the end, maybe like 60% of the movie in, that guy comes in. Mm-hmm. And he's, like, kind of like the second bad guy, I guess. But, yeah, like, he's so, like, freaking cartoonishly evil. And kind of cool at times. Like, when he's lighting cigars and shit.
Yeah.
They were kind of like, damn, he sucks, but he's, like, cool suck.
It's fucking funny.
Yes.
I mean, balls out funny. And seeing people like that get their comeuppance is always kind of fun. So it kind of, like, if the kind of serious tone of the movie up to that point, if you feel a little betrayed, just stick around, because it's pretty funny to see him and his cronies get their comeuppance. Much less him, because he gets his comeuppance at the hands of this priest character, which some people feel is a little like thrown in, but it was all a setup for, there was intended to be a part 2 to this, with a new Midian being built by Boone, and that priest character rejected by the Nightbreed after them. Again, underlining those themes of, how society tends to ostracize those it doesn't understand. So, there is a setup for a sequel. This particular cut really emphasizes that. And, we never got that sequel for obvious reasons. But it's really nice to see everything in this particular order. It does feel fuller. The only time I felt something out of place was when, at the beginning, when Boone, the main character, is talking to Maya Rudolph, his girlfriend. I'm just going to call her Maya Rudolph from now on. And she mentions that she's going to be at work, that they'll meet later.
Yeah.
It's all a setup for her to sing.
And then he's at that place when she's singing, but then it cuts to her being at her house again. So that whole scene was pointless.
Yeah, he leaves, and then she's at her house, and she's like, "Where you at, yo? I'm at home now." And I'm like, dude, Clive had to be doing a favor to somebody with that song.
Because it was a pointless scene.
Yeah, all it sets up is her singing.
Yes.
Like, you could have just cut to her at the house and, "Hey, I didn't see you come by. What happened?" That's it. There had to be no, "Hey, I work at the club tonight" scene, and definitely no singing sequence. Yeah. That song! What the fuck, man?
There's a lot of, like, background little country music, too, at times, where you're kind of
when they're in
party sounding.
When they're in taverns, and they're in a lot of taverns here.
Yes.
There's that country music in the background. Thankfully not by Danny Elfman.
Yeah.
But that makes sense, so... And it sucks, because it's country from the 80s. But, anyway, anything you want to add into the mix?
This is kind of like one of those movies that you would see, like, at like a video rental store.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at the back with all the effects, creatures, and you're like, hell yeah. And normally you rent it and you're really disappointed that they're in it for like a second.
Mm-hmm.
Chud style. Except this one, especially this cut, I remember the original. You actually get to see all that, and they kind of indulge in it. Sometimes there's just cuts to creatures for no reason, and you're like, all right, that's cool looking at least.
And you know what?
And it does kind of give it the scale to the place. So you're like, that's okay. But yeah, like there is a lot of that, just kind of showing people all these effects, makeup effects that they created, and it's just
And that
cool.
that goes back to something Clive Barker does, and here it was attempted on a visual level. I think it works, honestly. Uh, he manages to create an idea of scale, one, and two. He kind of communicates his ideas visually. So every time it cuts to something that's just like this weird, repellent mass of flesh with a face and limbs sticking out of it, it just the bulk of that comes from when our human characters are introduced to these weird grotesqueries, and it gives you that feeling of like, whoa, I've entered something else. And then on top of that, to see them have personalities, in the end, it makes sense. But it is an unusual approach, you know what I'm saying? And that's, I think, what has to be lauded most about this movie, that it didn't approach anything at all in the expected, standard, accepted horror way,
Yeah,
especially at the time.
it doesn't really have a structure that's normal,
Mm-hmm.
like you said. I just said what you said in a different way. I don't know why.
Yeah, kind of like this said what horror said in a different way.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh
Saved
shit!
it. Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. When we say it doesn't have a structure, we don't mean it's like all over the place.
No, it's just a different.
It's just the different way to tell a story, and I've appreciated because of that. This movie was almost destroyed Clive Barker's desire to make movies because they cut it to bits and ribbons, and it would actually be his next movie, Lord of Illusions, though he shot just about everything he wanted to in it. They ended up cutting his final cut, and he quit movie making. Hasn't made a movie since. So that's the thing.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, studios. But I'm glad to see that we finally get a version that he's happy with, and that to us as fans just gives another version to enjoy. At least that's cool. That I can enjoy this and the theatrical. That's pretty neat. I will say this is better than the theatrical, and I'm hoping the Cabal cut will somehow be better. If not, it'll be interesting to see what more they film for this thing.
Hopefully, some more like singing.
Dude, if there's more singing sequences, I'm gonna shoot Clive in the face.
Well, he didn't put him in.
Oh, he's gonna be dead by then, so
Oh, that's a good
that
point.
sucks. Anyway,
Hashtag warm food.
let's talk about a final score for this movie relevant to its compatriots, which honestly doesn't have a lot of compatriots, so that's a thing. But let's give a score on a scale of 1 to 10, and any final thoughts, give it to me.
I think its biggest strength is its uniqueness.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a word?
Sure.
Sure. It is a very unique movie, and so I don't think it will be for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
but it will be for like core fans for sure, because there is something there.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you don't like the story, you're gonna like the effects.
Yeah.
Or that hot
If you-
smoke chick.
Or that fucking singing sequence. What the
Oh
fuck?
yeah, dude! If you like really bad singing, this movie's got you covered. You like David Cronenberg?
There you
He's
go. A
in
little
there?
crone in your bone.
If you like a dude with massive forehead, he's the lead.
You're like a penis-headed guy that also looks like Jay Leno and a moon. Boom, got you covered.
Dude, I remember freaking Moonhead and the face guy being in there a lot more, but I guess that's just the ones that stuck with me
Mm-hmm.
when I was a kid.
Penis head.
Penis
That's why it
head.
stuck with you.
Um,
Anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, yeah, it's pretty cool. I enjoy it. I don't think it's a perfect movie, but no movie is.
Mm-hmm.
Danny Elfman kind of freaking goes a little too crazy at the end for my taste. So for that and the singing scene, I'll take off 1.5 points.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just give it an 8.5. It's a pretty cool movie.
And I'll second that notion. Now, I said this is my second favorite, and I'd probably give my second favorite, Clive Barker. I'd probably give my third favorite, Hellraiser, a higher score, but I'd still keep this in my second favorite. And 8.5, and it's a strong 8.5. There's no movie like this to date in horror. And again, this is more of a dark fantasy thing, and I wish more people would indulge in this type of filmmaking where the weirdness, the strangeness, It's just part of the visual fabric. It doesn't necessarily mean there's a killer around the corner. It just means that's part of what's going on. That is a very unique approach, and it holds water even now. On top of that, yes, very visual movie, super cool. Always fun to watch, always interesting to see. I think every time I watch this movie, it's like I'm watching it for the first time. I can't explain that. It's not a I forgot thing. It's just like it feels like every time I'm watching it for the first time. Not in the I discovered new things in this way, although that happens with anything you revisit, but just weird. It's one of those things, I don't know, maybe it's just me. But the point is, I love this movie. I think it is something, like you said, that it's not for everyone. But for those people that it is for, it is something that they'll really enjoy and like and want to revisit. I highly recommend this. At least give it a shot, especially if you enjoy the strange and the weird. This kind of fits the bill, I think.
Plus,
anyway,
hot smoke chick
with massive nipples, if that attracts you any. I would totally do the porcupine chick, though. That's my bag right there.
You would get freaking pricked.
I don't give a shit.
Die.
I would prick first.
You know who I would do? Enter Pelican!
Now, if you're interested, not going to explain what that is. If you're interested, the story of the theatrical cut continues in the original Epic Comics series from Marvel. And the director's cut has a continuation in comic book form also from Boom Comics. So if you want to know more what happened, the proposed part 2, it's in the Boom Comics version for this cut, and for the theatrical cut, it's in the Epic Comics
Man, you got
version.
freaking multiple timelines?
There are choices. There's also this of course is based on a novella by Clive Barker, and the novella is called Cabal. You can check that out. Alternatively, if you've already read that, if you've already seen this movie, there is a collection of short stories called The Midian Unmade, which has various writers, authors in the genre or otherwise contributing to the mythology of the Nightbreed. So there's a lot to chew on if this isn't the only thing that interests you. So give it a shot. Let us know what you think. In the meantime, hit like, share, subscribe, and those notification buttons, because we're out.
Eloquent.